Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. Hey, all you mentees, Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions, and join me today for my overview of these 3 hardcovers from Bitmap Books. So let's find out what's in these books together. Before getting started, I want to give the folks over at Bitmap Books a big thank you for sending us copies of these ultimate guides. So what we're looking at here are 3 different, I don't want to just call them art books, because they are art books, but there's just so much more to these than you would think. So I'm going to open each one of these, but let me just say, before I even open these up, I just want to talk about the packaging that you get from Bitmap Books. It's insane. It comes in a big box, and each of these particular books comes in its own little box. So the box has like this plastic around it. You open up the plastic, and then you have a box that has its own design, like it looks like a shooter, almost like it reminds me of like Defender from the Atari days. But anyway, and then you open that up, and in there you will find your art book. But the art book itself is even packed better than that inside the little box, because it comes with these little corner protectors. They're made out of like styrofoam and keeps your books from bumping the corners. And then in there, they come wrapped in plastic again. You open up the plastic and you finally get your book that comes sealed in its own plastic. I was just impressed and blown away by how much care and love went into packing these books. Okay, but let's go ahead and start talking about each one of these. So what we have here is the Metal Slug Ultimate History. Go straight. I cannot wait to talk about that one right there. The Ultimate Guide to Side-Scrolling Beat-em-Ups. And then the King of Fighters, the Ultimate History. You have the SNK logo here, King of Fighters up here, Metal Slug here. But for here, you do have the Bitmap Books logo. So we're going to look at Metal Slug first, and then we're going to look at King of Fighters, and then we're going to look at Go Straight. And of course, we'll be talking about the build and the goodies that are in here and what each of these books have. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the spine again, and then the back of the book, where you have the ISBN, Metal Slug, the Ultimate History, and written in Japanese, a little bit about Bitmap Books and how they brought this together. One of the things I love about this and the King of Fighters, I love this little piece right here. So it's not like a full art on board, because you have this almost like a spine grip on it. I'm sure there's a technical term for it, but I like that. And it's all written in Japanese right there. Let's open it up. Black end sheets, the title page, the Ultimate History, Metal Slug, SNK, the Metal Slug tank, and yes, since 1996. Table of contents and about the publishers right here. And this is how it's broken down. You have an introduction, a forward, a history, the games, and then the games to 2009, the interviews, which makes this such an amazing preservation of video game history. I love things like this. Introduction here from Bitmap Books, and then the forward here from Yutaka Naguchi, which is the SNK Director of Quality Assurance, and the history a little bit about Metal Slug, if you're not familiar with the video game, if you've never played it. And oh my gosh, it brings back memories. It's a side scroller, and you do get a little bit of that. So I think when people see books like this, they immediately think, oh, this book is an art book. Well, yes, it is, but it's so much more. I wasn't exaggerating. You get the sprites in here, you get the level layouts, you get the ads that were in different magazines, whether here in the United States or in Japan. And ads like this, love it. There's posters in here. And then, of course, you get the stuff about the games. What you came here for. The actual art, pixel art. Broken down like this. You get the bosses. You get the actual Metal Slug. The plane. And, of course, your characters. And Gun Force 2 kind of predates the Metal Slug era, but let's skip forward a little bit here to get to 1996 Metal Slug with the breakdown and the character designs right here. I love the original designs for Marco and Rozzy. Very nice. I love that this is all in here. This is a lot of stuff I've never seen, but this is my favorite thing that's collected in here, and I promise I'm going to try not to go too long about this, but flipping through each of these pages just brings back a lot of memories. That's awesome. And the boss battles, the insanity of the levels and pumping quarters in there. Because, I mean, this takes me back to the arcades. This is before there were any home systems that had Metal Slug. I did not grow up with a Neo Geo, nor the CD, nor the cartridge. Oh, this is when they added Eri and Fio later on. And yes, they did add more characters to the cast of Metal Gear. And there's the sprites of not just the villains, but also the supporting cast. It goes through everything. It goes through the Game Boy Advance version of the game. It goes through the Neo Geo Pocket versions of the games. So it is a historical look at Metal Slug. And then you get beautiful art in here too, like this, whether it's the cover art to a box or just from a magazine. I will say, if you don't like any spoilers, this will have spoilers for the ending, because, I mean, we are looking at a deep dive into the world of Metal Slug, so that is something to keep in mind. Me, myself, I think I have beaten these games so many times, and my youngest daughter and I love the Metal Slug franchise. I'm so glad one of my kids just loves it. Both of them love Mega Man, but one of them loves Metal Slug. Oh, this is when Ralph and Clark, is that, yeah, Ralph, that was it. Ralph and Clark joined them from Ikari Warriors. Of course, they were also in King of Fighters, which we're going to be looking at next. But this is an SNK game, bringing back memories. This book has 452 pages. All the way in the back, as I mentioned, is the interviews, or what the table of contents mentions is the interviews. And then, the ending. And the thanks and the credits right here. 452 pages. We're going to look at the build here in a little bit. But one thing I'm sure you probably noticed, and this is so nice, is that ribbon. And the ribbon, the bookmark ribbon, actually matches the color scheme of the spine. And this does have sewn binding, and it is printed in thick paper stock. But I love the fact that the orange book ribbon there matches this. That's a very nice touch. Next up is the King of Fighters, the Ultimate History, with Kyo and Iori right there. The spine of the book again, and then the back of the book. Just telling you a little bit about how Bitmap proudly presents this particular book. Now, this one's a little bit bigger than the Metal Slug book. I mean, it's page count. This one's 544 pages. One thing I didn't do, that I should have done, is kind of give you an idea of how much bigger these books are. So this is a Marvel Omnibus, and it's longer than a Marvel Omnibus and taller than a Marvel Omnibus. To kind of give you an idea of just how much bigger these books are. Now let's go ahead and open this up. Your end sheets and the King of Fighters title page right there. Forward, history, game art, character art, key art, interviews, and thanks. So forward by Bitmap, and again, Yazuyuki Oda. This is the so forward over here. So you do have the introduction over here to the left by Bitmap Books, and then the forward over here by Yazuyuki Oda. He's the SNK lead producer, talking about just the importance of the King of Fighters. And this is the history of King of Fighters. Round 1, 87 to 94. That's interesting, considering King of Fighters started with 94. So what they do here is kind of give you a history of other SNK fighting games, where these characters came from, whether it was I almost said Final Fight, Art of Fighting, or whether it was Fatal Fury, or Athena, or the Ikari Warriors. And King of Fighters was, I describe it like Smash Brothers before there was ever a Smash Brothers. I love the early sketches here of Kyo Kusanagi, but later on he became this. That was my main in King of Fighters. It was Kyo and Terry Bogard, and then in 96 I started adding Elena. But before that, it was Kyo and Terry and Joe Higashi. Those were my 3 characters. So you can play as 3 characters. So this goes through the 94 era, which has, of course, the sports team, and the Ikari Warrior team, the King of Fighters team, and the Fatal Fury team. But, I mean, this was a big deal in the arcades here, even in America, because we had played things like King of Fighters. We knew of Ikari, or we had played Ikari Warriors. Those had actually come out on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And by the time that these fighting games came out, like, I didn't play Athena, or I think they called it, Athena, of course, Japanese. But I knew of the game. And the popularity just grew and grew. My favorite King of Fighters is still 96. I think to a lot of people, it's probably 98, just because it has such a big cast of characters. And by that point, it had left, like, the Sega Saturn, and of course the Neo Geo, and gone on to the bigger systems like the PlayStation 2 and the Dreamcast. But for me, it was always King of Fighters 96. So this is 94 right here. Oh, and the music. But see, I played this at the arcade, but I love the music of the Sega Saturn version. That is the version that I still have. I bought a Polymega just to play my King of Fighters 96. I'm actually going to get together with some friends to play these games. There's Iori right there. Oh, and then Billy Kane from Fatal Fury. Oh, man, Neo Geo Land, which unfortunately does not exist. We went to Japan last year. We're going back this year. And Neo Geo Land is just not there. There's Leona. And again, characters like Yuri from Art of Fighting. Roberto Garcia. That's the man right there. He was my other character that I liked from Art of Fighting. Oh, Mature and Vice. Boy, they added all kinds of characters later on. Yeah, by the time what were some of the characters like in 2000? Like, Orochi had just blown up, and there were so many characters I didn't even recognize by the time you get to like 2000. So again, this book does not leave anything out. It goes through the Neo Geo Pocket era. It goes through the Game Boy Advance era. So it's got all these exclusive video games that maybe you haven't even heard of or played. Yeah, by the time you get to this era, like the early aughts, there are some characters that I was like, I don't know if I played as that character. That is the guy from Fatal Fury, Marco the Wolves. Garou. And there's finishing moves here, character profiles. So not just an art book, but I mean, completely also an art book too. Because there's all kinds of early sketches here for character designs. And then what they finally looked like. There's Chris. Better pass a little bit through there because there's a little bit of a twist with his character. Boy, this is everybody's favorite emo character, Iori Yagami. Yeah, that guy. He premiered in 95, but my dude was always Kyo Kusanagi. Although I did like Kim Kafwan. I had a backup team of King. Who was it? King and I think it was Robert Garcia. And maybe it was Mature. Man, this brings back memories. Just having friends over and playing fighting games over and over. And I love the endings, how it connected some of the worlds, like how Fatal Fury was connected to King of Fighters. And then you have this stuff back here, which is promotional art, which is art for the albums, the art for the video games themselves. I believe that's what they used for King of Fighters 96 on the Sega Saturn. There's Mature and Vice. The only thing that's not really collected in here, which I completely understand, because it's its own art book, and that is the Capcom SNK stuff. And then there's interviews all the way in the back here with the people that made these wonderful games possible. Now, let's look at the binding of this one. Also sewn binding, 544 pages, and something I know you've noticed already, the ribbon. Love the bookmark ribbon. The color scheme, that is also on the outside. That's awesome. Last but not least, Go Straight, the ultimate guide to side-scrolling beat-em-ups. You have no idea how much this brought back memories from pumping quarters in those machines. Just like King of Fighters and Metal Slug, but this took me way back because I love this. I love when you at the end of a level and each game told you to keep going. Oh, man. Because this goes before anything that came out in Metal Slug or King of Fighters. We're talking about games that came out in the 80s that were side-scrolling beat-em-ups. And a lot of them I played on the Nintendo, and then of course when I went to the arcade, like with Double Dragon at that bowling alley. Oh, this one brings back memories. Now, if you're wondering where you can get these books, you can. I'm leaving a link in the description of the video to actually Bitmap Books, where you can go ahead and get them. They are all in stock. I believe later on this year, in 2024, is when they will be released everywhere else, like Amazon and places like that. But if you want them now, I did leave a link in the description of the video. But this goes through early side-scrollers and beat-em-ups. Some games you may not have even heard of. I remember going to the gas station and playing Renegade. And then later on, there was Target Renegade. I remember the bowling alley having Double Dragon. And it's weird because you don't think about it. But, you know, as a kid, I remember, oh my gosh, the Nintendo has more villains in it. It's superior to the arcade, but, you know, looking at it from an adult's perspective, or from somebody that has just seen a lot of art, you see the big difference between that and then the Nintendo version. And then there's the Master System, there's the Mega Drive, there's the Atari Lynx, the Game Boy Advance, the Atari 2600, which I didn't even know they had a Double Dragon for Atari 2600. But, yeah. The Ninja Warriors, Rastan. That's the one arcade I would love to have in this house. I love the music, and that is one of the hardest arcades. Alter Beast right there. Rise from your grave. Oh, man. And Splatterhouse. The entire reason I ended up trading some comics for a TurboGrafx 16. I know, blasphemous. But TurboGrafx 16 had Splatterhouse. And I had extra copies of, what was it? It was like Batman comics my friend wanted, and Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden, of course, also on the Nintendo, but the arcade was different. The arcade kept moving. Dynamite Duck. I didn't even know about Dynamite Ducks until the Sega fighting game that came out with, like, what was it? The Sonic 3D Fighters, I think, on the Sega Saturn. And then more of the Double Dragon right there. Oh, bad dudes. If you know, you know. I swear I could flip through this and talk about most of these games. Bayou Billy, POW, Target Renegade, Vigilante. And then there are some that I'm like, I don't think I ever played that. Like, I don't remember Hachu. I remember Final Fight. I remember Final Fight and how mad I was that the Super Nintendo version did not have Guy. That was my dude. And then later on, they released a Guy version. The classic moment. Yeah. Where Cody goes to prison because of that. All right, whatever. We're going to skip a little bit through here, or I'm going to be talking about this book. Mug Smashers, I don't think I even played until, like, maybe it was an maybe it had to have been an emulator later on. And this is the Syndicate right here from Streets of Rage. Another classic. You know, the Super Nintendo had the exclusive to Final Fight, and Genesis was like, hold my beer, we got Streets of Rage. And then Capcom was like, it's fine, man, we'll make Final Fight 2 and 3 exclusives to the Super Nintendo. Then they were like, wait, we're going to give you Streets of Rage 2, which has one of the best soundtracks ever. Robo Army. Now, some of these games will reappear, not just the sequels, but you'll be seeing some of the characters later on in different video games. Especially if it has something to do with, like, Capcom. Like, a lot of the robots show up later on, like in Cyberbots, the fighting game. King of Dragons, that predates the Dungeons and Dragons game from Capcom. Battletoads, oh my gosh, the insanity and the difficulty of Battletoads. I love that they have a classic moment for some of these games. Captain Commando. My ninja dude, there he is. Ginzu, that was his name. That was my dude. The baby head. And The Simpsons. You know, my kids and I have played this together. It's still fun. There's just something really pretty about 2D artwork. Turtles in Time, which is the sequel to Ninja Turtles. Knights of the Round. Captain America and the Avengers. Man, to hear that in the arcade and coming from a, you know, comic book background, I freaked out. There was also the Punisher game, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, TMNT 3, which only came out on the Nintendo. Blade Master, Golden Axe 2. Oh, that's when they gave the dwarf like a gray beard. Yeah, Gilius Thunderhead. It's like, man, he aged badly. And let's keep going through here. So, Bucky O'Hare! Larry Hama got paid for that, though. Splatterhouse 2. Yes, that was also on the Genesis. And of course, the 6-player X-Men arcade. Who could, like, this was actually in one episode of X-Men 97. Oh. Oh, gosh, man. This is just so awesome. I love the other two books, but this is the one. This is the one. And I know, when you look at a book like this, you're expecting like original art and character designs. But for me, is the nostalgia and then like learning about the game and learning things I didn't even know about. This is Dungeons and Dragons. There were 2 of them from Capcom. And then they showed up on the Sega Saturn. I don't think there was a PlayStation version, even overseas. The Tick and Mad Stalker. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. That was on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo. So there are games that you're going to be seeing through here that you probably forgot about and for good reasons. And there's the second Dungeons and Dragons game from Capcom. This one was 4-player, while the first one was, I think, only 2. Then you start seeing a little more of like the 3D ones. By this point, it just kind of got, they're not as memorable. At least to me, they weren't. Yeah, although some of them still look pretty cool, though. What? Is this on the Game Boy? Yeah, this is the Game Boy Advance. Only reason, because we didn't have a lot of Dragon Ball Z back then. Back in my day. This is a 2007 Game Boy Advance. Oh, Castle Crashers. I just got that on the Switch. I love that game. And then the Scott Pilgrim beat 'em up game. So they're still going through the entire catalog of all these side-scroller beat 'em ups. And then later on, they started giving us more on the systems as like downloadable content. Well, you have companies like WayForward that gave us like DuckTales, like the remake of DuckTales. And they have their own video games like Mighty Switch Force. And that's one of my favorite companies. Them and Vanillaware. I love Vanillaware just because they look like a cartoon. Dragon's Crown. Yo, there is an art book for Dragon's Crown. I think it was Udon that made that. But this is more about the history, and it's more like a catalog of all these games that you may remember, and some that you didn't even know existed. This is the one that I think belongs in everybody's library. This is Streets of Rage 4, which was out on the Switch. I think on the PS5, there was a physical copy. Yeah, so these are like newer games that were developed by independent developers. Some are indie developers, but not like big companies. Man, Streets of Rage 4. And then some endings there, credits and thanks, and then the goes again. This is another big book. This one has 456 pages. The retail for these, they are $46 on the website, by the way. And this is what you have: sewn binding, and there's that eye printed in this thick, glossy paper. And here is the bookmark ribbon. So, man, that was a trip down memory lane for sure. And loved every single page I turned to. Just brought back some memories. Now I got to check out what else they have in their catalog. But that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing these books, I did leave a link in the description of the video. And that was the content and page count and build of these wonderful ultimate guides. So if you're a fan of fighting games, you're a fan of video games in the 80s and 90s and side-scrollers and beat-em-ups and, of course, fighting games, Bitmap Books have you covered. It was a nice walk down memory lane for me. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Everyone stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.